And in fact, as you say, it's probably the last time I come for a Lisbon scorecard, but Lisbon will survive in the treaty, so that's for sure. Anyway, I think the principles of reform are well contemplated in our EU 2020, so I very much will expect you to go on with your very important work. This has been, in fact, the scorecard needs no introduction. It has been a valuable tool for providing constructive criticism and input to policy debates over the last decade. And I very much expect you to go on with this input. And this year's scorecard is indeed more forward-looking, and the concluding remarks set out some orientations for the successor to Lisbon strategy. And reading through the scorecard, I'm struck by how much common ground there is between your recommendations and Europe 2020 strategy, which I launched 2 weeks ago. One area where we agree particularly is on the need to learn lessons from the global economic and financial crisis. The crisis shook Europe's economy to its foundations. It wiped away much of the progress achieved in previous years, but the crisis also exposed some fundamental weaknesses and unsustainable trends, such as global macroeconomic imbalances and speculative bubbles. The crisis demonstrated beyond any doubt that economies of member states are inextricably linked, particularly within the euro area. The lack of action by some can produce negative impacts for all others, as recent events have shown. This interdependence is not limited to the European Union. It extends to the whole of the developed world. This was the first truly global economic and financial crisis, and this is also the reason why the solutions must be truly global. I am therefore determined that the European Union should continue to play a leading role in developing global solutions, using to the full key fora such as the G20. But it would be disingenuous to blame everything on the crisis. We must be clear about this. The European Union suffered from weaknesses before the crisis hit. Over the last 10 to 15 years, the European Union has experienced lower growth than our main trading partners. Despite significant progress achieved compared to the rest of the world, the EU remains a relatively low employment economy with less than 2/3 of our active population in work. In Japan and the US, the figures are closer to 3/4 of the active population. Given that our active labor supply will start to shrink as the baby boom generation starts to retire, low employment levels will put strain on our social protection and pension systems. Europe must therefore ask itself, how can we sustain our model of society and quality of life when we face such momentous challenges? We have a choice. If we tackle our weaknesses and exploit our many strengths, we can safeguard this model of society, this way of life, and will secure our position in the new global order. The greatest danger to our future is the temptation to revert to business as usual, as we knew in the pre-crisis world. This would risk a lost decade of sluggish growth, perhaps no more than 1%, and high unemployment of 10% or more. The EU would be overtaken by our global competitors once and for all, and the social progress we have achieved over a period of many decades would be put at risk. This is totally unacceptable, both politically and socially. We must do everything we can to renew Europe and emerge from the crisis in a position of greater strength, exiting the crisis a great opportunity to implement change. Europe 2020 proposed a new growth model for Europe, one that is based on 3 complementary and mutually reinforcing priorities: smart, sustainable, inclusive growth. So growth at the center, because the potential for growth was affected, but now not any kind of growth. We are proposing smart, sustainable, inclusive growth. The rationale is clear. The European Union should not and will not compete with major emerging economies in terms of labor costs, namely China or India. Neither should we engage in a race to the bottom on regulatory or social standards or environmental standards. The European Union will succeed best when it plays to its strengths. Smart growth means making best use of the European Union's very important asset, our human capital. By using the enormous potential that our current and future workforce holds, we can ensure that skills, creativity, innovation become the European Union's major competitive advantage. Policies to promote the knowledge triangle of education, research and innovation will drive smart growth, and they are therefore at the heart of Europe 2020. And since the knowledge economy and the digital society go hand in hand, we will place a major emphasis on promoting high-speed internet, smart grids, and other knowledge infrastructure. The Center for European Reform analysis of Lisbon strategy points to education and skills as 2 areas that should receive a greater policy focus. I fully agree. We need a world-class education to continue to compete successfully in the global knowledge economy. It is simply not good enough that only 2 of the world's top 20 universities are in the EU. It is not good enough that only 1 in 3 Europeans have tertiary education compared to 4 in 10 in the US and more than 5 in 10 in Japan, Korea, Canada. We also need more science and technology graduates. Already today, China produces 6 times as many engineering graduates as the entire EU. Sustainable growth means making the most efficient use of scarce natural resources and exploiting our lead in the shift towards a low-carbon economy. To take just one example, our automotive industry is well placed to drive forward the production of low-emission vehicles.